So last time we were supposed to be covering according to the program. The first session was dealt with all the subjects that are related to the process of renunciation. We didn't get through halfway last time. So hopefully this time I will backtrack a little bit in order to talk about the subject of bodhicitta, enlightened mind. Before anything else, ideally before even you walk into this room or any other room, a gompa or what we call gompa in Tibetan, the shrine room, the monastery if you like, the place where the teaching is to be given, there are certain prerequisites on your side that you need to implement before you even listen to any teachings, even simplistic as they are here, given here. So whether it's His Holiness the Dalai Lama giving the teachings, or whether it's somebody as simplistic as myself giving the teachings, the principle is the same. Yeah, the principle is the same. So here, because we're going to be discussing the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, it's a Mahayana. We must develop a Mahayana motivation. So therefore, even in theory, just pretend that you've come here tonight, just for the benefit of all sentient beings, that you're going to be listening to these teachings. And that even if you just remember one word, one passage, anything here, that you're going to use that knowledge to achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings, everyone that you know of that is suffering just like us. So we must have that prerequisite. With that motivation, every action we do in body, speech and mind becomes a Mahayana virtuous act. So if you're going to be giving food, you compliment somebody, it becomes a Mahayana act because you have set the tone of, in this case, the teaching. So it's a Mahayana teaching. Secondly, as last time, we have to, we have to, when we shouldn't be preoccupied with the person in terms of appearance, because we're all bound by appearance. You should be listening to the words. And then when you listen to the words, you should be listening to the meaning of the words. Then, when you listen to the meaning of the words, you shouldn't listen to the interpretive meaning, but the definitive meaning of those words. So, again, your perceptions have to change here and say, well, you're not Tibetan, you're not a monk, why should I listen to you? Well, obviously you're not listening to the words. You're not listening to what I'm saying. So if you have the karma to be here, then at least for your sake, not for my sake, because I'm already a Buddhist, for your sake, listen carefully. Listen to the meaning and listen to the definitive meaning. Listen to that thing that really you need to take home with you tonight. Then the second aspect, which is even more important, is the three principles of the pot. So on our side, how should we behave when we're listening to any teachings? Again, when I say that, in your mind you should be thinking His Holiness the Dalai Lama and everybody else below that. And so the three principles of the pot is, it's like a cooking pot. Yeah? Our mind should not be like a cooking pot that has no bottom. So whatever we put inside falls out. So in other words, when you listen, you retain what you've heard. Secondly, you shouldn't be a pot with a lid on top of it, so nothing can be put in. So in other words, we're not closed-minded about what's being said, simply because of my appearance. You don't know anything, Robert. What do you say? As I said last time, don't look at the hair, listen to the words. Then, the most subtle point, which is do not be a cooking pot that is still greasy on the inside. It hasn't been cleaned. So whatever we put into that pot, it still tastes like garlic or whatever's been cooked before. So the equivalent of that is we come into this class or any other class with a biased mind. We come in, we say, oh well, I know more than you. I know more than the Dalai Lama. I'm just coming here just to see if he knows what I know. So obviously it's said in the scriptures that you can't teach the Dhamma to somebody that has pride. It's not possible. It's impossible to teach somebody with pride. spiritual matters, because they know more than you do, inverted commas. So this is the most important motivations that we have. Now, or any of these subjects, any of things that I've just mentioned, you can go away and meditate on them for 2 or 3 weeks, just right now, without even starting the subject. So the whole subject of bodhicitta, the whole subject of the Mahayana path, Mahayana, the great vehicle, as a lot of people misunderstand. And of course this is all coming from the Tibetan point of view. You must keep that in mind. Other traditions have different interpretations. So what I say here, if you're coming from a different tradition, you have to obviously do a lot of calculations in your mind and convert a lot of things that I'm saying into your tradition. Or perhaps it doesn't even fit into your tradition. You must take that into consideration as well. So, as I mentioned last time, one of the unique characteristics of Tibetan Buddhism is that Tibetan Buddhism contains all of the Buddhist teachings, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and within the Mahayana, the Vajrayana path, or the Tantric path. No other tradition has that. Certain aspects in Japan, China, I think, they contain Tantric, some of the lower Tantric aspects, but they do not contain the yoga and the highest yoga tantra aspects. Highest yoga tantra, things like Kalachakra, which we're all familiar with His Holiness the Dalai Lama giving the teachings. That is a highest yoga tantric practice. But that is within the Mahayana tradition. So, what does it mean to be a Mahayana practitioner? What does it mean to be a Mahayana practitioner? Within the Tibetan tradition, Jetsun Kaba, who is the founder of the Gelugpa tradition, which His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a member of the Gelugpa tradition. He is not the leader of the Gelugpa tradition. Gandam Tripa is the leader of the Gelugpa tradition. Jetsun Kaba says that the definition, or a Mahayana practitioner is defined as someone, a person. In this case, a person. It doesn't, scripturally, a bodhisattva does not have to be a person, believe it or not. A naga, for example, can be a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva could be even, there is a famous case back in the late 60s, early 70s in the Gap. Is the Gap in the South Head or the North Head here? South Head. Does anybody know? No. South, yeah, thank you. Back in the early 70s or late 60s, there was Google it if you like, there was a famous Alsatian who could tell, and the Gap is renowned for people committing suicide. This Alsatian could tell whether somebody was committing suicide or whether they were there just taking pictures, being a spectator, you know. And nobody trained this dog. It did it by its own volition. So this dog was, by itself, rescuing people's lives. Technically, that's a bodhisattva. Now, for a lot of people, that's a bit of a mind twist. How can an animal be a bodhisattva? But from Buddha's point of view, form is irrelevant. It's the mind, it's the consciousness that is the most important thing. So that's why you will hear things like, well, you know, when you're on a bus, there could be a Buddhist sitting beside you. You don't know about it. Because you don't know about it because you can't read somebody's mind. You're too preoccupied with the appearance, you know. So we're looking at mind. That's why it's important in this case, as I said earlier, to pay attention to the words. So even though in this case I'm not a monk or a Buddhist or Tibetan, beg your pardon, it doesn't mean that disqualifies me from helping in some minuscule way. But if you don't give me the chance to do that, then that nullifies everything, and we all miss out in some way. Me in terms of helping you, and you in terms of, well, I think the Dalai Lama's my teacher, so off you go to the Dalai Lama. But of course, as I mentioned last time, we don't have the karma to have the Dalai Lama as our personal teacher, to be on tap when we have crisis, or to give the detailed teachings and commentaries. Very, very few people would have that, such karma to have an enlightened being like that as their personal tutor. So, to be a Mahayana practitioner, we must have bodhisattva motivation, which is, I wish to achieve enlightenment, perfect enlightenment, for the benefit of all sentient beings, without discrimination. High or low. Whether you like me or you hate me is irrelevant. That's your karma, you know. So a bodhisattva for all sentient beings, no discrimination. Total 100% pure equanimity. Now, that in itself is an incredible thing to even just begin to kind of contemplate. Equanimity. Prior to that, prior to the subject of equanimity, it's not really recommended in the scriptures, but from my personal experience, before we even get to the subject of bodhicitta and the sevenfold cause and effect, which is one of the ways of generating the enlightened mind. The other one is through the process of exchanging oneself with others, which we will not be talking about here tonight, simply because it's too profound. Secondly, it requires a very subtle and agile mind, no disrespect. But if you're new to Buddhism, if you get the wrong message, you're going to think, oh yeah, I can do this. And people have become sick. People have abandoned the Dharma because they've misunderstood that particular point, because they thought they are capable of doing these things. When they were given those teachings, they totally got it wrong. They really, really got it wrong. They physically became sick because they abused the practice. So we're not going to be doing that. So we're going to be doing it simple, and hopefully we'll be able to go through all the points. So prior to all that, there is the subject of rejoicing. And the Buddha mentions in the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 shlokas the benefits of rejoicing. Now it seems like again, keeping in mind that we're working psychologically first, then spiritually second. Rejoicing seems like a very deceptively simple concept, and which simply is, you're feeling happy, sincerely happy, from the bottom of your heart, of somebody's good fortune, you know. Oh, they got married. It's not going to last. Excuse me? Excuse me? What did you say? You know, it's not going to last. What happened to rejoicing? Why are you talking like that? So, somebody obviously doesn't understand the law of cause and effect. Even if you pretend, don't verbalize it. Don't say the marriage isn't going to last or whatever, it's not going to work out, the relationship. Don't say it. Don't put it into the wind. You know, it's like the rabbi said. You know, it's like, you know, if you break a pillow in half and all the feathers fly out. You know, can you put all the feathers back? How long is it going to take you to gather all those feathers and put them back into the pillow? You know. So don't say a negative thing, because it's just going to fly out and you can never be able to bring it back. Yeah. So even if you just pretend, yeah, good on you, hope it lasts for 50 years, 100 years, whatever it is. Even just pretending that we're happy for someone has dramatic consequences for this self-grasping I, what colloquially we call ego, but the ego is still a byproduct of a self-cherishing mind. This is where Jung got it wrong. So, rejoicing, simply from the bottom of your heart, looking and seeing, you know, what, fantastic, that's wonderful, you got that job. You got the job before me. You're making more money than I am. You got the resources to go on holiday to Paris every year if you want. Wow! So rejoicing is an antidote to jealousy. Unless, dare I say, we're how do you say, addicted to jealousy. And of course we are, because everyone you know is jealous. So therefore, through habit, force of habit, through social interaction, we have to talk and speak like them. Otherwise, if we don't, we're not part of that group. Hence, peer group pressure. So our peers dictate our psychological state. Now, from somebody which we will discuss a little bit, but we didn't discuss last time, somebody who is trying to find a way out of suffering, the last thing you want to do is hang around people who are propagating suffering and encouraging you to suffer even more. So now you're beginning to see there's a process of renunciation. I don't want this. I can see where this is heading. I can see how this is going to develop. So simply by rejoicing, and you say, that's fantastic, that's wonderful. Simply saying that, you stand out amongst a group of people who are cynical, sarcastic, and people think, my goodness, you're so weird, it's so strange. So being compassionate, really in the world that we live in, makes you stand out, and that begins to show you how much suffering there is out there, just by simply saying, fantastic, you got that. And people would say, ooh, that's a little bit too sweet for me. I can't handle such, you're too whatever, I need a little bit of anger, I need a little bit of jealousy, and that goes to show, again, how important it is to know our psychological state by saying, you're addicted to anger, you're addicted to negativity, you need that. So we know for a fact, psychologists know for a fact that children who are brought up in abusive environments, either physically abusive, verbally abusive, angry, where domestic violence is all the norm. Children like that who are taken out and put into foster care, where all of a sudden you're put into loving parents, hi, you okay? You got your own bed, everything's sweet, they're looking after you. The foster parents are, sincerely looking after you, asking you questions, what do you want this? You want to come with me? You want to come to work? Whatever it is. It's too, it's too quiet. It's too tranquil for them. Because they've been brought up in such a violent environment, they actually have to create violence to feel comfortable, feel like they're in control. So they have to yell, scream, where in a foster care where there is no yelling or screaming or there is no discord. They actually have to create it. Why? Through habitual tendencies. This is how they've been brought up. They need that in order to feel in control. Now if you think carefully, we, in a subtle way, fall in the same category as well. We're interacting with people who are jealous all the time, pride, anger, etc., etc. You remove yourself from that. You hang around with a bunch of monks or nuns. Everybody's polite, mindful, courteous. No reason to talk unless there's a reason to talk. No gossiping, malicious talk, slander. Boring. How boring is that? Why is it boring? Because you're used to being angry, you're used to being jealous, you're used to criticizing somebody. You're used to sexually harassing people. You're used to criticizing somebody, so you feel better. It's a normal survival mechanism. By understanding that about ourselves, you can clearly see where you are. It's basically somebody's just turned on the light switch and you say, oh, so this is what it looks like. This is where I'm standing. This is where I kind of belong right now. This is your karma at this present situation. So change has to be voluntary. If it isn't voluntary, if you force yourself to be a Buddhist or anything like that, if you're forcing yourself that change before it's time, before you understand who you are, the ramifications could be quite drastic towards the end of your life because it accumulates. Karma accumulates. And if you're forcing yourself to do something, you know as well as I do, it's not going to work out. Not for very long. You can't run away from yourself. You can't change your karma on a dime, as the Americans say. It can only be done over a long period of time. In other words, the karma that you're experiencing now, yes, it's like looking out the window of a car or something. You're going the wrong way. But you've got to realize, you've got to wait for that car to run out of petrol before you can work your way back. So as I mentioned last time, for those of you who are here, the karma we have here now is from a previous lifetime. We're on a bus and you have a ticket. that's brought you now here. That ticket is null and void right now. As soon as you walked into this room, that ticket is null and void. You now need to buy a new ticket to take you further down the road. So this lifetime, this is it. This is it. As soon as you were born, the karma that brought you here, propelled you into this life, it's gone. It's finished. Now, you have to, because you have a connection with the Dharma, this is your only time, your only opportunity, this life, that you have with the Buddhist teachings. And to get that ticket, you need to put a little bit of effort into the Buddhist teachings and create the virtue and the merit and use this precious human rebirth to get onto that bus and to take you on to a better lifetime next time around. Hopefully it'll be a one-way ticket in terms of enlightenment. But because this is Mahayana, there is no one-way ticket, it's a two-way ticket. You will be coming back in order to benefit other sentient beings. No problem. If you have the resources, the ability to come back, there's no problem. There is no such thing as suffering, when it comes to the Mahayana path. Everything is converted to the path to enlightenment. So, before we can actually be of benefit to anyone, we have to be of benefit to ourselves. So continuing on from the first class, we were speaking about death and impermanence. A lot of people don't want to talk about that subject, especially in the West. Hence, you avoid the spiritual path. And the purpose of all religion, you name it, the purpose of all religion is the preparation for death. It's not about sitting beautifully with strong back and all this kind of Hollywood Buddhism. It's got nothing to do with that. It's preparation for death. Because if you look carefully, in the New Testament, the Quran, or the scriptures of the Jewish scriptures, the Talmud, the Hindu scriptures, etc., etc. It's always telling you, behave properly, do this, do that, yeah? Because this is what's going to happen to you when you die. This is where you're going to go when you die, etc., etc. So it's the same thing with Buddhism. The kindness of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is they have come back here to give us the teachings in order to prepare ourselves for death. That's it. That is what will determine true happiness, lasting happiness. What we have now is temporary. It's transitional. It won't last, because what comes together comes apart. What goes up must come down. What is born must die and perish. Because impermanence is subtle, transitional impermanence that we're not aware of, because we're too preoccupied with the concerns of this life. Actually, all the concerns of this life are an anesthetic. They anesthetize us. So we're immune, insensitive to what's going on around us. We're too busy talking about other people and being preoccupied out there. Very few look internally. And of course, that's what a spiritual path is. It's looking within. And a lot of people can't do that, don't want to do that, because they're afraid, depending on how you were brought up, because it's going to bring back bad memories. Fair enough. Fair enough. Nobody can force you to do something that you don't want to do. Nobody wants you to do something that you don't want to do. So that's why I keep saying we need to understand our psychological state first before we can begin to look deeper in. Yeah? So we don't have any place to hide. Once we begin to look internally, we don't have any place to hide. We have to be nakedly honest with ourselves and say, yes, I've done this, I've said that, and I have to confess that, I have to admit that. And it's only once we understand those kind of things, which is karma. And karma is the actual door to happiness. That's actually when we begin the change, the real change. Last time, for those of you who were here, we did the Chenrezig purification practice with the 4 opponent powers. Scripturally, and the reason why I keep harping on about scripturally and is in Buddhism, we say there are only 3 ways we can know something is valid. Valid cognition, we say. For those of you who want to study Dhammakirti specifically. There are only three ways we know something is valid in Buddhism. One is through scripture, two is through our senses, and three is through inference. There is no other way we can know something is valid or not. So, I can feel it, I can touch it, that's valid. My senses are not perfect, but I can still walk through a door. I can still recognize that there are people here. Yeah? Through inference, the smoke over there, well, there must be a fire. I can infer something. Doesn't have to be a fire. Could be somebody doing donuts with their car, burning rubber or something like that. But I'm still, through my knowledge, I can infer there's something. Scripture is through the Buddha's own enlightened mind and through the Buddha's teachings. When the Buddha says something, we can say, well, that's it. The Buddha said so, full stop. There's no argument there. That's the definitive meaning. Why do we say that? Well, the Buddha is omniscient. The Buddha is free from all delusions, from all suffering. The Buddha will never have to experience suffering ever again. For us, it's very difficult to comprehend to be free from jealousy, for example. I wouldn't know what that would feel like because it so permeates my body. Resentment, anger. We do that how many times a day? It permeates us through every single pore of our body. So it's impossible for us at this point in time to comprehend what it would be like to be free from these kind of delusions. But yet the Buddha has done that through studying how the Buddha did it, not just his life, but through the actual philosophical mechanisms that he went through, the actual practices. We can see that enlightenment is possible. Or is enlightenment just only possible for one person and the rest of us are just doomed to be worshippers? Again, this is something that we have to clearly see through our own experience, through our own understanding. Is enlightenment a practical possibility? Lama Tsongkhapa says it is. Lama Tsongkhapa shows us clearly how we can study, how we can, through reading, contemplation and meditation, we can actually become enlightened. It's a practical, doable possibility. It's not something just for monks and nuns. Some people think only monks and nuns can become enlightened. That's not true. If you think that, then you're pretty much closing the door to your own freedom and liberation. So, karma is the actual door to happiness by understanding that karma is certain, karma accumulates, it compounds, to use an accounting term. Gotcha. We cannot experience a karmic action we have not performed. Those karmic actions we have performed, we will definitely experience, either in this life, the immediate next life, or some future lifetime. So, when we are talking about future lifetimes, we are talking about subtle consciousness. The soul, if you like. If you want to call it the soul, you can call it the soul. The mind, consciousness. It is this subtle consciousness that we possess that really is the doer of everything that we do. So this body we have, this is a karmic result of a consciousness and the previous karmic actions that we have done. Yeah? So one of the things that a lot of people really misunderstand in terms of reincarnation is that somehow, this identity that I have of myself, etc., will be somehow going on and on and on, and I'll forever be Robert. But the thing is, when we die, you will lose all identity of yourself. You won't be able to even bring your name with you. Everything, this life, basically gets rubbed out. But the karmic actions we have performed, those things continue on. So that's why it's said in terms of contemplation on death, death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, And the only thing that can help us at the time of death, to make death a virtuous action, is our spiritual practice. That's the only thing we have that we can take with us. So spiritual practice means positive virtue, positive karma, actions that are conducive to acquiring a rebirth that will allow us to continue our spiritual education, if not enlightenment. So the minimum requirement that you would like is to be in contact with the Buddha's teachings sometime in some future lifetime. Guess what? That time is today. This is it. This is it. This life that you have is the result of all the prayers and aspirations that you've made in previous lifetimes. Very rare. Very, very rare. Because you're spending your time, effort, money just to come here, just to listen, just a little bit of the teachings. So that's part of buying that ticket that you need to go on down the road. So karma, going back to karma, fluctuating a little bit here in terms of subjects. But karma is action. A lot of people, if you remember that movie, The Godfather, I forget which one or two, where Michael Corleone is in the church and there's mass, there's a christening, and in the meantime we see the scenes cut to his henchmen who are going around shooting other people that he's ordered to be assassinated. And yet he looks like a God-loving man. He's there, family and in church, whatever, such a beautiful man. But yet there are people under his orders that are going around killing people. And yet on his side he's probably thinking, well, I haven't done anything. I personally haven't killed anybody, etc., etc. And a lot of us think like that in terms of action. Just because you haven't done something physically doesn't mean you're not karmically responsible or involved in that action. So karma operates in body, speech, and mind. So if you want to generate a virtuous action, hey, I heard Bill got married. Woohoo! Yes! I hope it lasts forever. Rejoicing. Karmically speaking, you share now the good fortune of that person. Now, on the other hand, it's not going to last. Whoa! That's a negative karmic action, verbally. Don't say it. Don't say it. Even if you think it, don't say it, because you won't be able to bring back those words. Secondly, you say it to somebody else and they say, you know something, Robert, I think you're right. I don't think it will last. No, I didn't mean it. You can't take it back. Now somebody else thinks that way too. You are now responsible for that. Karmically, that's it. Now the effort is going to be twice as hard to purify that action, which we'll talk about a little later on. So, no mindfulness. Be careful what you say to who you say it to. When in doubt, leave it out. Yeah? So body, speech and mind. So, it's said, scripturally it's said, and I always like to say this to, I don't think there are any Sicilians in the audience, but I always like to say this to anybody who's Sicilian in terms of vendetta, back to the Godfather thing. Even though you don't personally kill somebody, or you don't personally order somebody to be hit, simply hating somebody, having a vendetta for somebody for 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 years. I wish they were dead. Scripturally speaking, you accumulate the karma of actually murdering somebody. Wow. Think about it, the hate that you have, Oh, I heard whatever, drop dead, I don't want to hear. I was constantly putting the poison in the bucket, constantly poisoning. It's a drip, 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 and then you have a barrel, a swimming pool, a lake, an ocean. How in the world are you going to get rid of an ocean? You can't drink that. Nobody can. It's too late. It's fixed. It's huge. It's massive. Now you accumulate the karma of actually murdering somebody. The consequences of that brings us to the next subject, which is the thinking about the disadvantages of being reborn in a lower state of existence. What do you mean lower state of existence? We're going to be people forever, right? It doesn't work like that. Remember the consciousness? Consciousness takes on the form that is conducive to its karma. So any sentient being, a dog is a sentient being, anything with a mind is a sentient being. So we can, that's what is this transition of adopting of different forms depending on our karmic situation. The karmic consequences of murdering somebody is to be reborn in a state of existence where you will have to experience similar or identical suffering that you have inflicted. So it's basically like a nightmare that just doesn't end. But yet it's a nightmare with physical, genuine pain. And in fact, in the Perfection of Wisdom in 8,000 shlokas, the Buddha, when he was asked by the bodhisattvas to please describe the hell realms, the Buddha said, no, don't ask me to do this because you're going to throw up in blood. It's so horrific just to describe what's going on. So, how do we know that the hell realms exist? Well, we know that that the Buddha said so. So that's scripturally, the Buddha says that. Why should I trust the Buddha in this case? I've never met the Buddha. Well, think of it this way. Think if somebody says to you, you know, they said, you know, I'm been to Paris. I've never been to Paris. But I've met somebody who's been to Paris, and they described to me Paris is this, you have to go to these places, there's this fantastic restaurant. What, just one restaurant in Paris? Come on, give me a break. You know, so okay, so there's 3,000 good restaurants you need to go to in Paris, right? And etc. So they're giving me a description from their own experience. Likewise, a Buddha. A Buddha has achieved enlightenment. A Buddha has direct perception of the lower states of existence. A Buddha can clearly read our minds. A Buddha can clearly see what's going to happen to us in 30 years' time. So therefore, we can infer that the Buddha has the knowledge and that the Buddha is telling us the truth. That if we do this and this and this is going to be the result. Yeah? So therefore, the hell realms do exist. Secondly, because everything is based on mental accumulation. In this life, by observing people around us and their mental condition, by observing our mental condition, we can clearly infer as to what's going to happen, the karmic consequences of people's actions. So, people who really enjoy fighting, people who really enjoy aggression, anger, violence, and that's their form of entertainment, we can infer that when that person dies, birds of a feather come together. You will only take rebirth where your mental state takes you. In other words, it's just like it says in the Bible, you know, in the New Testament. You know, as ye sow, so shall you reap. That's karma. And there are many karmic references in the New Testament. Unfortunately, in Christianity, they've kind of overlooked that in terms of understanding. But at least Christ understood that the law of cause and effect is there. So we cannot experience an action we have not performed. So you being aggressive and violent, you can easily see that, we can easily infer rather, that you will be in an environment that is conducive to your mental state. If I plant potatoes, I shouldn't expect, you know, roses to grow. If I'm complimenting you, then there's a good chance that we're not going to get into an argument. But if I'm insulting you, I shouldn't expect a compliment from you. That's totally impractical. That's unrealistic. I'm constantly condescending and putting you down or whatever, but I expect you to be, you know, basically massaging my ego and saying, yes, yeah, you're very good, you're good, this, but, huh? That's unrealistic. In the long term, the karma that accumulates from that is quite negative and impractical. So without compassion, there's only suffering. without compassion, there's only evil. So wisdom without compassion is evil. A lot of people say, I want to study emptiness, the perfection of wisdom. That's my thing. And us in the West who have access to education and we have very sharp minds, a lot of people are in love with that concept of emptiness, wisdom, and that's it. But I hate to tell you this. Wisdom without compassion is evil. Because yes, you can be a very bright person working at Caltech or at MIT, and yet you can design a bomb that can destroy a whole city. So much for being a genius. Without compassion, why don't you use that genius faculty in order to feed people, clothe people, share your knowledge and wisdom? Not possible because we have a miserly mind, no compassion, no bodhicitta. It's all about me, 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 me. And because of that, we can only find a lower state of existence. All of samsara, which is the cycle of birth and death that we live in, all of those different planes, from the formless realm to the hell realms, we can see in the psychological states in terms of where we live in. You want to see what the God realms live in, or how the gods live? Go to Vaucluse, go to Potts Point, where people are so rich, we don't need to interact with anybody else. I don't even have any concept. It's like JFK said when he was growing up, that's John Kennedy, the late president, when he said he was so rich and affluent that he didn't even know there was a depression on. What depression? Dude, we went through a depression in the 20s and 30s. People jumped out of windows. They couldn't find a job, worked. I don't know. What are you talking about? Have another martini, you know? That's the God realm. You have accumulated so much positive, not virtue, but positive karma that now it has manifested in a material sense. That's wonderful. Good on you. And again, rejoicing. Fantastic. Wow. That's wonderful that you can do that. But the thing is, in the God realm, there is no chance or opportunity to practice Dharma or accumulate virtue, to buy that ticket. Why? I can't. I've got another party to go to. You know, and I've got to get, you know, I don't know, I'm getting sick of Armani, you know. I think it's something else, you know. It's too much, you know. And then the thing is, in the God realm, just like, or here, in the human realm, just like in the God realm, when somebody begins to age, lose their physical appearance, you don't get invited to the parties as much anymore. People are looking after younger people, you know, somebody a little more famous, somebody more, you know, got that little bit of life, that little bit of spark, make me feel younger, you know. So it's the same thing in the God realms, where, sure, the God realms you live for an extremely long time, extremely beautiful, and that's really why the Buddha himself emanates an aura. Because when the Buddha taught in the God of the 33, when he taught specifically for his mother who passed away and was born there, in order to stand out amongst the gods, the Buddha had to be more beautiful, more attractive, more luminous than them. Hence, he had to project this aura about himself, hence the golden appearance. Because if you're beautiful and attractive, you're not going to look at somebody, you get away from me, you know. You have to be more attractive than them. And then you say, hello, and then I'll listen to you. First of all, you hook them because they're sexually attractive, and then they realize, oh, okay, you're teaching me the Dharma now. Okay, right. That's how it works. And that goes to show you the deluded state that we're in. But there's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because that's the way we were brought up. That's our karma. So we shouldn't be punishing ourselves. Again, it's just understanding where we are. It's like that psychological game or experiment in Martin Place. This attractive woman, she does herself up like an old lady, and nobody wants to help her carry the baggage. She puts on a red miniskirt and high heels. Everybody wants to help her carry the bags through Martin Place. That's just the way it is. You know? That's, you know. But the thing is, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. You shouldn't feel like, yeah, I've done that, I've said that, I've felt that, whatever it is. This is all the purification process. It has to come to the surface. You have to be honest with yourself. You don't have to say it to anybody else, you have to be honest with yourself. And this, when you have a genuine teacher, this is what's going to happen. When you have a one-on-one relationship with the teacher, they're going to know, right, that's it. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. That's what's going to help you to purify your actions. If you resist, then you're basically stymieing your own progress. It's about you, not about anybody else. That's why it's wrong to be talking about, oh, I had this dream about the Dalai Lama last night and he gave me the winning lottery tickets. What? I think it's more like your ego. But you don't speak about things like that because you're attracting negative influence and also becomes competitive. So how come you dream about the Dalai Lama and I don't dream about the Dalai Lama? I don't like you. Again, I'm not rejoicing for your good fortune. So then now there's a combative situation here. In other words, you've just brought your worldly life into a spiritual environment. Leave that with the shoes. Don't bring it in here. Don't contaminate that environment. Because you're just going to make this a part of, you're going to make this environment just an extension of your living room or your office. No disrespect there, because your office is back there. Yeah. So motivation is very, very important. And then when we see this, we have to realize that yes, we have got it wrong. We will always get it wrong. And what's the proof of that? Well, here we are. We're born in samsara. We're born in this particular place, which is the realm of desire. Desire for wealth. Desire for food. Desire for sex. And basically, that's the three aspects of human existence are in those three branches. Sex, money, and food. That's really what we've spent all our lives doing that. And time is running out. So, by understanding karma, we can clearly now see for the first time what we need to adopt and what we need to abandon. What is it that we need to abandon? We need to abandon suffering and the causes of suffering. What is it that we need to adopt? We need to adopt virtuous action in body, speech and mind. So who do we know that actually has this virtue? Who is not our family members, not anybody at work, anybody that you socialize with? All these people, as I mentioned before, they're only there helping us to ingrain the suffering that we're experiencing in samsara. They're only making us more at home in samsara. They're not actually allowing us to say, well, okay, this time next week we're going to be going on pilgrimages and we're going to be meditating, we're going to be getting rid of all this suffering, etc., etc. That's pretty rare to be involved with somebody in your family that thinks that way. Most of humanity does not fall into that category. Most of us, we're just taught that we have to get an education, get a job, get married, have children, and then, die. That's it. So no wonder we feel lost and confused, most of us, because we know there is more to life than just that. Because animals have families, jobs, and make money. And then, of course, they just eat, have kids, so we do the same thing. So we're not using this full human potential, and the course we're reborn as an animal is not using your mental faculties. Because all we're doing is just eating, working, that's about it. We're not using our mind for any virtuous action whatsoever. So virtue is defined as any action in body, speech or mind that is a cause for future enlightenment. That's what virtue is. Anything in body, speech or mind. So, suffering. What does it mean when we say suffering? What exactly does that? We know the gross forms of suffering. Somebody hits us, we receive a bruise, a cut, etc., etc. That's obvious. But that is a result of many, many forms of subtle subtle karma. So the action of somebody yelling at me or insulting me, that is a karmic action that is due to me insulting somebody else, either in this lifetime or previous lifetimes. As soon as somebody insults me, that action now is purified. I've actually paid back my debt to that person, as long as I don't retaliate. If I retaliate, insult that, well, it's on again. And so the cycle goes around and round and round. So what does it mean to suffer? So now we look at, in terms of the Four Noble Truths, in terms of the Buddha taught the first of the Four Noble Truths, which is suffering. He didn't teach the origin of suffering, which you think would be the first, but it's actually the second. So he said that everything is suffering, which is really to wake us up, as I've been just discussing, in terms of karma, in terms of what little bit we've discussed. It's not possible to get into the full details, but hopefully you can clearly see that we're not as virtuous and we're not as clean as we like ourselves to be. Even though, yes, we haven't killed anybody in this lifetime, we haven't done anything really that compares to some of the atrocious things that have happened. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean that we don't possess within our mental continuum the karma of actually killing someone. We have done that in previous lifetimes. Many, many, many times. And have ordered other people to kill other people, just like Michael Corleone, etc., etc. Many, many, many lifetimes we've done these things. And so somebody who's really genuinely sharp of mind and begins to study the law of cause and effect, they will clearly see that, well, hang on a second, I'm not as saintly as I thought I was. I'm not as clean. I'm not as free from suffering as I thought I was. Because I still, within my mental continuum, have these negative actions that I have done that can ripen any time. Because I've hurt somebody, maybe something will happen tonight. The karmic cause of murdering any sentient being is that you will experience a short lifespan, should you have the good fortune to be reborn as a human. So, when we see children dying in the uterus even, some not even born, when we see children, why do the good die young? Why do the good die young? People who believe in God have a very difficult time comprehending that why would God take away such a young, innocent child? From a Buddhist point of view, yes, it is a tragedy that people have to die. But from a Buddhist point of view, again, we don't look at the appearance, we look at the consciousness. So somebody who died at the age of 10 or 5 or something like that, we can be pretty certain that in their previous life or a couple of lifetimes before, they were responsible for somebody's death or multiple deaths. There's no doubt about that. So what's the tragedy? That they died as a 5-year-old? Or the tragedy that they thought it was a good idea to kill some people so many years ago or so many lifetimes ago? The tragedy is that you are in samsara overall. That's the tragedy. So the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas look at us and say, you're in samsara. Wherever you are, high or low, you will experience suffering. Rich or poor, whether you're a king or you clean toilets for a living in terms of a social structure, you have the same potential to achieve enlightenment, and you have the same potential also to be reborn in a lower state of existence. So it's all suffering. It's pervasive. So there's the suffering of change, the suffering of suffering, and the all-pervading suffering, which is all of samsara. There is no place in samsara that you can run away to and say, here, this is my green little corner where I'll be safe and snug, and for the rest of my life, for all eternity, I will just rest in ever-loving peace. It doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, it's not that way. Because we can't run away from our karma, our karmic responsibilities. We have a karmic obligation. So everything is suffering. Cessation of suffering. Suffering, cause of suffering, I beg your pardon. Cause of suffering. This is the subtle point, and at this point, This is where, for those of you who know the life of the Buddha, where the Buddha achieved enlightenment at Bodh Gaya, and then for 49 days just sat there because he said, this is too profound. Nobody's going to understand this. Huh? What? He's not going to do anything. He's not going to go out on the journey. He's not going to turn the wheel. He's not going to go to Sarnath. You know, that was his first. He's the Buddha, right? He knows everything, and he says, it ain't going to work. Nobody's going to understand this. It's just too profound. The cessation of suffering. To understand the cessation of suffering, the cause of suffering, beg your pardon, is just too profound for people off the street to know. So then he was invoked by Brahma, the god of the gods, the god of the worldly gods. And he said, listen, you promised so many lifetimes ago, 3 eons ago. An eon is the time that a universe is born from a big bang, expands, contracts, it comes back together. 80 of those constitute a great eon. The Buddha took 3 of those great eons to achieve enlightenment through the sutric path. Okay? So Brahma is now speaking to the Buddha and saying, you promised all those eons ago that you're going to achieve enlightenment for all mother sentient beings. You've done it. You have to fulfill your obligation. No, I can't do it. It's too good. It's too profound. In the Buddhist scriptures, this is echoed where Jetsun Kapa, the founder of the Gelugpa tradition, where he's writing the Lamrim Chenmo, which is what I'm discussing here now, which is the aspects of Lamrim. And when he was writing the chapter on emptiness, on profound view, he said, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to leave this out. Then Manjushri appeared to him and he said, you have to put this in. You know, you must do this. Jetsun said, no, it's too profound. Nobody will understand this. You have to do it. And he did put it in. So likewise with the Buddha, he was finally convinced that, yes, okay, I will have to turn the wheel of Dharma. But strangely enough, that the first person the Buddha decided to teach was actually dead. And so then he said, oh, okay, all right then. My disciple, the people that I hung around with, those 5 sadhus, you know, I'll go to Sarnath. And he turned the wheel. So why is it so profound? It's profound because now, to find the origin of suffering, you really have to go inside. There really isn't a place to hide. At this point, we're talking about somebody who has developed renunciation and can clearly see that interacting with people with worldly concerns, gain, loss, pleasure, pain, fame, infamy, praise and scorn, the 8 worldly concerns. When we are talking about people, when we're interacting with that, there is no freedom from that. There is only more continued suffering. So somebody develops renunciation, I renounce suffering, the cause of suffering, I renounce samsara and the causes therein. I'm looking within to free myself. That's where the actual spiritual journey starts. It's at that point. Very, very few people in the world pass through that door. Very, very few people pass that door, let alone knock on that door. You are very lucky because you are voluntarily trying to find that origin of suffering. The origin of suffering is self-cherishing mind that you might have heard His Holiness the Dalai Lama speak about and others. This illusory concept of somehow that we exist in a concrete, permanent form. It's a little bit counterintuitive because we can see that things exist concretely, so we think that things will change or things don't change so quickly. And it takes a very brave person to stand and look up in the sky and say, you know, I don't think the sun is actually moving. I think we're moving around the sun. But all your senses are saying the sun is actually moving. Because look, it's coming up and then it goes down. But yet I don't feel anything else changing around me other than the sun actually transitioning. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? So it's the same thing here. It's all your fault that I'm suffering. It's the world, you know. It's the Liberals, it's the Labour, it's the National Party, you know. It's Donald Trump, it's all his fault. No. It's you. It's us. We have the karma to reborn here, therefore we have an obligation, we have a responsibility. But we're not aware of it because everything around us is happening and we're preoccupied with that. This is attractive, that's repulsive. And everything else in between that. So everything becomes politics, as I mentioned before. We are preoccupied with politics, good and bad, evil and virtue. But where do you fit in? Well, no, I'm good. I'm always good. I've always been good and I will always, be that way. That's wrong. So we have this self-cherishing mind. It's not the ego. The ego is a byproduct of this, what is perceived as an inherently existent I. This concept comes about through all our aggregates that we have and through the interaction of the consciousness with the body, with the environment, in a very, very brief introduction to it. So I have this concept, first of all, of myself, and myself likes this, likes that colour, likes that person, doesn't like that person. Through that, now I'm creating karma. Through that karma, that now accumulates within my consciousness because now I've developed desire, anger, jealousy, hatred, pleasure, pain. But because I have a survival instinct in order to preserve this body, now I have to do other things as well. I have to get rid of competition, murder. I'm interested in that woman. I need to get rid of competition, from her. My country is better than your country. And we can see that, for example, when the British were when they were anywhere in the world. Singapore, India, the white Sahib. It's so good to be white, rule Britannia, and all that kind of stuff. It's all nonsense. It's nonsense. And then the gross delusion is seeing Indians, or in this example, Indians or people in Singapore believing that, I've got to be white to be good in this world. That's a gross delusion, to be thinking that somehow being Westerner or white is the best thing to do. So in that example, which is a historical example, lies the whole key to this self-cherishing mind, to thinking I'm better than somebody else. And even if I have to lie and pretend, I will do that in order to preserve my reputation, to preserve my wealth, to preserve my influence, power, political influence. I will need to get rid of anything or anybody that challenges me. So to counteract that, we need to develop compassion. That is the only antidote. As Arya Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, all the Buddhas of the past have searched what is the antidote for suffering, and that antidote is the enlightened mind. There is no other antidote to this self-cherishing mind. So when somebody is compassionate, when they are willing to help others, we say, you're selfless. When we meditate on this so-called I, inherently existent I, this thing that we really believe really exists, on the actual emptiness of that, we say we meditate on the selflessness of the person. So the synonym itself is representative of true existence. So we have conventional bodhicitta, which is compassion, and ultimate bodhicitta, which is emptiness. To be selfless nicely encapsulates both conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. So somebody's selfless. They're not thinking about themselves. That's why I said before, even if you pretend you're happy because somebody got married, it is a direct antidote to this self-cherishing mind. It is a direct antidote to your anger. That's how ingrained our concept of ourselves is. Through eons and eons and eons of lifetimes, we have developed and protected this concept of I. That even you experiment, and perhaps you've even come across that. We are so, how do you say, we are so protective of our concept of ourselves that even if somebody looks at us, what are you looking at? Automatically, we become combative. What do you mean, what am I looking at? You know, so it goes to show how it's not in terms of insecurity, it's really how I'm not sure what the right word is. But anyway, it clearly shows to us how ingrained this whole concept of existence, us existing inherently is. And if we go back a little bit now to the subject of death and impermanence, the ultimate betrayal that we will experience in this lifetime is when you realize that this body is letting us down. That's the ultimate betrayal. You think your husband left you, your wife left you, you think that your relatives let you down, or your brother or sister, or they've let you down. The ultimate betrayal that you will experience is that your body, that we have protected for so long, pampered for so long, done all sorts of things, lied, cheated, murdered, gossiped, and all sorts of things to protect this form, it will let you down. It's a direct antidote. Death, impermanence, and contemplating on that is a direct antidote to pride, arrogance, self-grasping. So those people who say Buddhism, it's so morbid, you guys think so much about death, and lighten up, man, come on. It's spiritualism, crystals, get with it, incense. But from a Buddhist point of view, we're saying, no man, you're the one that's deluded. Crystals can't help you. Incense, you can smoke all the incense you want, if that's what you want to call it. You know, it's not going to get you anywhere. The real thing that's going to get you somewhere is to look at reality as it is. To change your mind. Why do you need to change your mind? Because your mind got you into this in the first place. So everything we do is escapism. It's an anesthetic. It's a diversion. It's numbing our senses. For example, recreational drugs. It says it in the word, doesn't it? Recreational drug. Why do you need to take drugs for the fun of it? To escape. To escape from what? It's said during the Vietnam War, talking about another colonial power. Sorry about the politics. When the Americans were in Vietnam, that the rise of taking of heroin was on the rise. Not because they were close to the Golden Triangle and it was cheaper, but because the environment that they were in was a hellish environment. When those soldiers went back home to the States, all of them, a majority of them, did not continue to be drug addicts anymore. Why? Because they were at home. The hellish environment no longer existed. In other words, they were on drugs because they needed to desensitize themselves to what they were doing, experiencing, and seeing in Vietnam, in a war zone. Recreational drug. It's a little bit, for those of you who are Sherlock Holmes fans, Conan Doyle, you remember that Sherlock Holmes in the book took cocaine and morphine. Why? Because his mind was so quick and agile, he needed to anesthetize it in order to put himself in a tranquil state, not to be thinking so much. So even in fiction, which is closer to reality for most of us, there's truth in that. So why do we need to take all these drugs? Why do we have this concept of, boredom, suffering, loneliness, etc., etc.? All that boils down to the self-cherishing. This concept believing that somehow we inherently exist. We are independent of this body. How do we know that we're independently of this? How do we know that we think we are independent of this body? Well, for example, You touched my arm. Wait a minute, whoa, backtrack. You touched my arm. Who's mine? That implies ownership. My leg, my eyes, my hair, my. Who is mine? Well, Robert. Well, who is Robert? Robert is this person that you see. Robert has these kind of characteristics. Are you Robert? Are you Robert? Are you Robert? Who's Robert? Robert possesses these kind of characteristics, so we give a list. So Robert is a label. Likewise, this body is a label. Man's body. White man. They don't exist inherently. They are dependent upon other aspects. So for you to understand that I am Robert, I need to introduce myself and say, that's it, that's Robert. We'll put a label on that. And likewise with everyone else. Tina, yeah, Ben, etc., etc. Yeah? These are labels. But you can change those labels. Maybe the labels fall off. And we adopt other personas. They don't exist inherently. That's the grand delusion. Because if I existed inherently, permanently, I wouldn't have to die. I would never age. And every time somebody sees me anywhere in the universe, they'd say, that's Robert. But no, I'm subject, this body is subject to change. My consciousness, because it is under the subject of delusion, it really believes that it exists inherently. So therefore, it's saying, this is who you are, this is who you will always be. You are immutable. But that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. Honey, we're going to get married and we're going to love each other till the day we die. That's possible, but not exactly going to happen. Because we change. Circumstances change. People change. Minds change. We grow. It's a process of individuation. Again, Jungian concept. Constantly growing. The mind, the consciousness does not age. The body does age and change. And of course, again, harking back to what we were saying before, the consciousness is the thing that will go on to the next lifetime. If I die with that kind of delusion, then there's a chance, then for sure it's guaranteed that again my consciousness will take on another form and will still believe that it exists inherently. Now under a different label. So that in a nutshell is the origin of suffering. Now the cessation of suffering. Again, this is a concept now. Is it possible to achieve enlightenment? Is it possible to stop being jealous and angry at somebody? No. If you have a vendetta against somebody, this person really, truly, 100%, really, I hate them. They really did this to me. They really did that to me. They really, really need to suffer. Wow, such negative action, such negative thoughts. And we think like that too, in subtle ways, don't we? Because when we see somebody, my brother, he's never going to change. Huh? What? Huh? My ex-wife, forget it, she's never going to change. What? Etc., etc., etc. We think that these people are forever going to be that way just because we have experienced them one way. We think that everybody else has the karma to experience them that way as well. That's not true. That's not true. So, is there a way of stopping this suffering? Is there a way out? Again, this is something that very few people will even think about, let alone have access to. Very, very few people will have access to this kind of concept. And so, as we've mentioned before, everything is impermanent. So, if there's a cause, if something has come together, it must come apart. So in this case, because suffering has occurred, there are causes for suffering, there must be a resolution to the suffering. There must be some way out. But how do we find a way out? As I mentioned before, firstly understanding what the problems are, our psychological profile, our spiritual quest then to find this inherently existent I. slowly observing how we perceive things. So, the best way to do that, in a conventional way, is to see what happens to us throughout the day. Throughout the day, we interact with everybody, loves, anger, etc., etc. All 84,000 delusions in one day. Wow, what a grand tour that is. Then, slowly, we go home from work, wherever, slowly unwind, relax, dinner, talk to people, whatever it is, TV, slowly, we begin to relax, prepare for bed. Then we make the preparation for bed. Some people wear jammies, they have special, covers and things like that. Slowly you're feeling weak, tired, etc., etc., and you get into bed, into a comfortable place. Then you're slowly fading in terms of you can't hear things anymore. You can't feel your body anymore. You're starting to get cold. You're under the juna. And slowly you're fading, but you still have flashes of memory of what happened throughout the day. Perhaps you had an argument in the day and it's haunting. Perhaps somebody said a joke and you're still remembering that. And slowly you're dropping off to sleep until you don't remember anything. From that, now you enter the bardo of the sleep. And all that process is a facsimile of the process of death. This is very similar to what happens in the death process. At that point of when you drop off into that sleep, if you really died, at that point your consciousness will leave the body. But those things that happen throughout the day will still come with you they will be like a dream. But in fact they won't be a dream, they will be actual real entities. Because you will now a naked, raw consciousness. You will not be tied to the body anymore. There will be no distractions. Yeah? If you could somehow control that, if you can somehow come to terms with, hey, I'm dreaming, aren't I? If you understand that in your dream state, you can control the dream. The tiger just disappears because I'm dreaming the tiger. Likewise, if at the time of death, if you say, okay, through your meditation practices, over 20, 30 years of meditation, you understand the process of death, you understand what's going on, you say, now I'm actually dead, I've left my body. Now this will occur, now this will occur, now this will happen. Once you understand your true nature of mind, the true consciousness, you can clearly see what's happening, you know what's going on, you actually free yourself. That's why in psychology, when they say, that's what the first thing is, okay, let's find out where this trauma has happened. No, I don't want to go there. It's too scary. I don't like big dogs. I don't like them. Let's go and visit this, So once you actually find out how and why you're afraid of these big dogs, the dog disappears. That's the key to actually the true nature of your mind. Once you understand how the mind functions, where all these delusions come from, how they work, and how now karma operates, and all these delusions from that, you're free. No more anger, no more inferiority complex, no more anxiety. It's gone. It's finished. The next step, once you perfect your meditation, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Perfection in terms of familiarity into emptiness. Once you get into that more and more and more and more until finally you will reach a point where you will go beyond the formless realm in terms of meditation. Your meditation will be so deep that you will actually achieve nirvana. Which is, what is nirvana? What is enlightenment? It is where you no longer have to be reborn involuntarily in samsara. You now choose consciously, because you have control, where you're going to be reborn, whom you're going to be reborn to. So all the high lamas, they don't reincarnate, they incarnate. You and I reincarnate because we've got no control. We're at the mercy of our karma. Enlightened beings incarnate. They decide time, place, people, country, where, the specifics. They have absolute control. At this point now, Four Noble Truths, this now represents the level, this is the highest level in terms of the Hinayana path. At this point now, the Hinayana path and the Mahayana path diverge. At this point, the Four Noble Truths, an arhat, which is someone who has achieved Hinayana Nirvana, who have purified or cleared their delusions, but not the imprints of those delusions. They have a direct perception of emptiness in terms of self-inherent existence, but not the lack of inherent existence of phenomena. In other words, how the world exists. So in other words, it's like a jar that's full of garlic. You removed all the garlic, but the jar still smells of garlic. The imprint of garlic is there. So that's what an arhat is. To remove the actual smell of the garlic, the imprint of inherent existence, you need to go on the Mahayana path. That's the true, full, complete enlightenment. That's the enlightenment that Shakyamuni Buddha achieved. Yeah? And he taught the Hinayana path for those who have that cultural connection with it or that aspect to it. So the actual full enlightenment is on the Mahayana path. At this point now, you have to become a bodhisattva. And it's that bodhicitta, that conventional bodhicitta, that now begins to work on those, those subtle delusions. And totally clear. So the jar, that was, to use that example, that was full of garlic, now is totally pure. No smell of garlic, no garlic whatsoever. Full, complete, perfect enlightenment. Irreversible. So, at this point, this juncture, as I said, what now makes us take on the Mahayana path and not stay on the Hinayana path? Well, it becomes a voluntary decision. So now at this point, we have the ability, we should have the ability to free ourselves from suffering. We can clearly see the Four Noble Truths, how they work. We clearly see how samsara is caused. We clearly see how karma operates. We clearly see that the causes for suffering are many, but the causes for virtue are few. So the Buddha himself said that those who were reborn, the causes, all the sentient beings that were reborn in the highest state of existence, they're as few as the dust on my fingertip. Those sentient beings that were reborn in the lower state of existence, they are as many as the dust that covers the earth. More causes for suffering than there are for enlightenment. So at this point in our theoretical journey to enlightenment, we now have the tools to achieve enlightenment. But the question is, how can you leave everybody behind? Would you leave your daughter and son, your parents behind to suffer and reborn again and have to experience either life as an animal or a hell being, when you can just give them simple advice and just to feed them a little bit of medicine is enough to get them going? An example, scriptural example, Modgalayan. The Buddha's one of the Buddha's main disciples. He realized through his clairvoyance that his mother was going to be reborn in the hell realms. And he told her, he said, there's no way in the world that she can achieve enlightenment in one lifetime, because you can't force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. So he told her, he said, listen, when you hear a bell ring, just recite Om Mani Padme Hum. Just, Chenrezig mantra. Just whenever you hear any kind of bell ring, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme. So the day finally came when his mother passed away and she was reborn in the hell realms. at that time, she was to be put into some boiling lead, in a cauldron of boiling lead. And one of the hell guardians banged the cauldron and it rang out like a bell. And she said, Om Mani Padme Hum. That was enough to be reborn back into a precious human rebirth. Fairy tale? Sounds like it. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's not. It's scriptural citation. And that's how subtle our consciousness is. It's that, just that simple little thing, act, can actually be of benefit. And on that little bit of, it's almost a breadcrumb, isn't it? And that little breadcrumb is enough to put that person back onto the path to enlightenment. That's all it is. And that becomes an enlightened act. So, if now we, through our study, contemplation, meditation, years of travel and experience, we have come now to experience a direct perception of emptiness, how can you ignore all these sentient beings who have helped us, nurtured us, mother sentient beings, whom we have taken rebirth countless of times, have looked after us, have educated us, and we say, forget about you, I'm just going my own way. I'm not going to do anything for you. It's a little bit irresponsible. If people can get a job, go to America and send money back to India or China or wherever it is to look after their parents, if they have that kind of compassion, then at least for us who wish to achieve enlightenment, we can say, well, look, I'm not going anywhere without you. Because nothing can hurt me now. I have the resources at hand to achieve enlightenment. You're not going backwards. Nobody's going to hurt you. It's only a plus to actually be of benefit to somebody else. And plus we have a karmic debt, a karmic obligation to help them. Because we haven't achieved enlightenment by ourselves. This body is the product of my parents. It's a biological product. I didn't do this. Only my consciousness is my responsibility. That's the thing that I brought to this relationship. This physical form is the union of my mother and father. So a bodhisattva thinks carefully about their own suffering, how they've experienced suffering, and then they look around and they say, yeah, you're suffering too. You too, you too, you too. That's why it's possible, once you help yourself, you can help everybody else. It's all the same. So then we're on the Mahayana path. I will achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings without exception. Whether you like me or hate me, I'm going to do this. So how do we do that? First, we rejoice. We have that concept of rejoicing. Feeling happy for others' good fortune. Wow, you got this center here. Fantastic. You're a lawyer. Went to university. All the privileges and abilities that were given to you that you earned. Fantastic. What incredible merit and virtue. You know, if you haven't been to universities, gee, I don't like people who've been to uni. They're just, why? Why are you thinking like that? You know, rejoice for people who have that. Why? I have to, even if you fake it, like I said before, fake it. Why do I have to fake it? Because I'm afraid of my own anger. I'm afraid of the karma. If I become jealous now, I'm afraid where that karma is going to take me. So slowly, I train myself to feel happy and rejoice for others. Eventually, it will be sincere and genuine. Fantastic! Wonderful! You can do this. Then, equanimity. Equanimity itself, as I alluded to earlier on, you could spend lifetimes literally trying to develop equanimity. Equanimity means feeling the same way towards all sentient beings. Your enemy, your friend, or a neutral person. Not hating one, not loving one, and not being indifferent to somebody else. All encompassing, feeling happy for everyone. That requires a lot of scriptural study, a lot of meditation, and a lot of soul searching and asking questions. Equanimity. All sentient beings have been our mothers. We've discussed that before. through the process of karma, through the process of this consciousness which doesn't die. It has no form, no color, no substance, no taste. It is just pure consciousness. It must take on a rebirth. So it has taken rebirth many, many, many times. So statistically, we must have all been somehow karmically linked together. All sentient beings have been our mothers. Yeah? All sentient beings have been very kind to us. Right now, you know, the car that you drive, did you make that car? Did you make any part of that car? Did you make the light fittings? Did you make the tires? The clothes that you wear? Have you made any part of what you're wearing tonight at all? Somebody else did that. Professional, mechanics, engineers, clothes designers, etc., etc. All we did was get a job, get some money, buy a car, buy clothes. We drive on roads that other people have prepared for us. We go to universities and schools where teachers teach us. We are dependent upon others constantly, others' expertise, experience. What is it that we have done ourselves? All sentient beings are mothers. They've been kind to us. All sentient beings have been very kind to us. Even those people that have abused us have been very kind to us. Why? Because even if you say bad things about me, you only reinforce my renunciation. There it is, samsara. Keeping in mind, we live in a world where grown men shoot young girls in the head because those girls want an education. That's samsara. In the same token, those same girls who get shot in the head win the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts in terms of advocating freedom and rights for young people. Yeah? That's samsara. One way it's this, one way it's that. It's too confusing. I want out of here. So, you're kind to me by showing me the delusions of samsara. It's just another fuel on my knowledge to say, yes, I want out. Yes, there's nothing here that you can tempt me with. It's just more fuel for my wisdom or my aspiring wisdom to get out. That's how we should use that. It's a little bit like, in martial arts. Yeah? You don't have to expend energy. You use the energy of the other person and then to throw them off. I haven't even broken into a sweat. And yet that person there has got a broken leg. It's like that, isn't it? So it's the same thing here from a bodhisattva's point of view. Yeah? Come on, bring it on. Do whatever you want. It only burns up my negative karma even more. I'm not going to hurt you. You can hurt me. But unfortunately, you'll have to experience the negative karma of that. But for me, I'm out of here. That kind of mind, that again, it requires a very sharp mind. Somebody who's selfless. Somebody who is constantly attacking that self-cherishing mind all the time. So, equanimity. All sentient beings are mothers. They've been very kind to us, wishing to repay their kindness. Wishing to repay their kindness. Now, I'm going to do the best that I can, and the best that I can is to achieve enlightenment. I'm going to give you the material substances that you need, but the best is for me to achieve enlightenment and to show you the way out. Yeah? Then, loving kindness. Generating loving kindness to sentient beings. What does that mean? That means that I see that you don't have the access to the Buddha's teachings. You don't see a way out of suffering. So I wish you did have that. So I'm willing to share my knowledge. I'm willing to give what I have. In other words, you're selfless again. You're willing to share. You're not hoarding the knowledge or the wisdom or anything like that. Yeah? Then you have compassion, which means I see that you're suffering. I wish you didn't have that. I really wish you didn't have that. Then you have universal responsibility, which means I now personally take personal responsibility for all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment. I will lead them myself. I have the resources, I have the knowledge, I have access to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings, etc., etc. I will now guide everyone whether you like me or not. So a bodhisattva is like a bridge that will take you from one side to the other side. So there are actually three types of bodhisattvas. There is the king who leads in front. Then there is the boatman who takes people to the other side. Then there is the shepherd who shepherds people like a flock of sheep. Everybody achieves enlightenment before them. They are the three categories of a bodhisattva. Then the next category after the universal responsibility is actual bodhicitta itself. You actually become a bodhisattva. You actually, within your mental continuum, now uncontrived bodhicitta. You don't have to force yourself to think about others' enlightenment. You are naturally, spontaneously, constantly thinking about how can I be of benefit to others. Here's some money. Here's this suggestion. Here's a book. Here's this. He's constantly giving and being of benefit to all sentient beings with the wish that this money, that this compliment, that this handshake be the cause for your enlightenment. In some way, we have created a karmic connection. So it's said, whether you hurt a bodhisattva, whether you kill them or you compliment them, you still create a karmic connection with them. Somewhere in the future, they will be your teacher and will lead you to full enlightenment. So we don't know who a bodhisattva is. We don't know who a Buddha is until they open their mouth. The Buddha himself, if he were to sit here today, would not be able to help you in any other way other than to teach the Dharma as is happening now. How does the Buddha help us? The Buddha helps us by teaching the Dharma, by changing your mind and developing faith in him, the teachings, and the Sangha. The Sangha being the Arya Sangha. Those monks and nuns who have achieved, who have a direct perception of emptiness. That's the Arya Sangha. So once we become a bodhisattva, now we become a son or daughter of the Buddhas, and we are under the direct protection of the Buddhas. Whatever you want, worldly or spiritual, will always be there for you, which will be necessary for your enlightenment. You need access to teachings, no problem. You need the resources, no problem. There will be benefactors that will come out of nowhere and will start giving you money and sponsoring. Yes, I think it's a great idea. We should build a Dharma center or a temple here. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, let's do it. Hey, where did this guy come from? I don't know. Let's do it. You will have no obstacles to your enlightenment because you will be under the direct protection of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, because they will see, here is somebody who really, really, really cares and wants to be fully enlightened, as I, the Buddha, have, and all the other Buddhas that were enlightened before. So they rejoice for you. From that itself, you acquire an incredible amount of merit. So the actions of a bodhisattva are way beyond. I mean, we could be here for eons and we still wouldn't be able to list all the virtues and benefits of being a bodhisattva. So, a bodhisattva, by offering a cup of water, I offer this cup of water to the Buddha for the behalf of all mother sentient beings. You now accumulate the merit of as many sentient beings as there are in the universe, or the universes, simply by offering that with a sincere wish, which is more beneficial than filling a whole room full of gold and diamonds and all sorts of precious jewels. Because as many sentient beings as there are, that's as much virtue that you accumulate. Now you do that with every single thing that you do. If you bless the food that you eat, and you say, okay, I'm going to eat this food so that I can achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings. There are people in this world that don't eat, have no access to food. May I be a vessel to help those sentient beings. Simply blessing your own food and eating it with that kind of concept is beyond comprehension. It's beyond, there is no way you can count the virtue that you accumulate through that action. You will be under the protection of all the gods and non-humans. You will always have access to the teachings. You will be always close to the Buddhas and senior bodhisattvas. Yeah? You will always be liked by animals and other people. They will always feel comfortable around you and always feel like you are a refuge to them. And if you're an Arya Bodhisattva, a Bodhisattva who's a direct perception of emptiness, whether you're a monk, nun, or a layperson, you are now an Arya Sangha. You are an object of refuge. Your picture can be put on a shrine and you can be worshipped because you have the tools at hand to actually be of benefit to sentient beings. You are an object of refuge to all those in samsara. That's where we want to go to. To be an Arya Bodhisattva in this lifetime is doable. It is actually doable. You can do it. To be fully enlightened in one lifetime, not possible. It's very, very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. So once you become Bodhisattva, that's it. You're in. That's what we need to be. Any questions?
Don't speak all at once, jeez. Don't speak all at once.
Anyone else?
No, go for it, Brenda.
Are there any differences between Tibetan Buddhism and other Mahayana traditions?
At this point, when you become a Bodhisattva, you want to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. It's like having a lance in your chest. You want to get it out as quickly as you can. So you want to rescue everybody as quickly as you can.
That's Tibetan tradition.
That's Tibetan. So there's an urgency to it. That urgency means that you want to achieve enlightenment tomorrow or yesterday, really. So what that requires is a method for you. You need to find a method to achieve enlightenment very, very quickly. That's where the Vajrayana path comes in. Vajrayana path, as His Holiness says, is the path of the Bodhisattvas. And the secret to the Vajrayana path, I'm not allowed to go into any more details than that, is that it's very, very, very quick. If not one lifetime, then 2 or 3 lifetimes and you're fully enlightened Buddha. And that's what a Bodhisattva seeks. Very, very quickly, I need to do this because I can't, it's like your children. Your children are at home, they need food, whatever it is. You've got to go out there and find food. You can't let them starve. It's that kind of urgency. I can't afford to let these people die and have to suffer anymore, I need to become fully enlightened. Because only a fully enlightened Buddha can actually help all sentient beings. How can a fully enlightened Buddha do that? A fully enlightened Buddha can manifest as many atoms as there are in all the known universes, and they can manifest to all sentient beings and teach all those sentient beings in their appropriate intellectual level and in their appropriate language and their capacity, and therefore give them the appropriate medicine that is necessary. Only a fully enlightened Buddha can do that. An example, scriptural example of that, when in the time of the Buddha, when some man came over and he wanted to become ordained, and the Buddha wasn't there at the time, but Modgalayan and Shariputra were there. And they said to him, no, we don't think you have the karma to be a Buddha. I think you better go back to your worldly life. So on the way back, he met the Buddha who was coming back in. And the Buddha said, where are you going? And he said, they told me I can't become a monk. And the Buddha said, no, that's not true. You have the karma to be a monk. Why? What do you mean? He said, many, many lifetimes ago, eons ago, when you were born as a fly, you landed on a piece of manure near a stupa, and there was a flood at that moment, and that flood spun you clockwise around the stupa, and that was enough for you to accumulate the merit. Only a fully enlightened being that has no obscurations can see something like that. No obscurations in time, up, down, or anyway. Yeah? And by the way, the Buddha, when asked, can you see the origin of my consciousness? When did my consciousness begin? And the Buddha's reply is, I cannot see a beginning, nor an end. In other words, it's infinite. The universe is infinite. Our consciousness is infinite. We can't destroy it. You can't run away from it. You can only change it. In other words, free yourself from the suffering. enlighten yourself. That's the only way out. There is no other way. You can't hide. You can't buy your way out. You can't lie or joke or impress somebody because you're attractive or something like that. Say, hey, come on, you can do me a favour, can't you? No. You can't get out of it other than to enlighten your mind. You have access to that. So please use that. Yes.
Can you just talk very briefly about the tantric aspect of the Vajrayana path? And also, is there proof that Buddha taught that? And what proof is there? What is the knowledge of him teaching that aspect?
I won't be able to talk too much or anything about the tantric path. That's not something that's open in a discussion like this. That's something that needs to be discussed with your own personal teacher, and that's only through His Holiness the Dalai Lama says a minimum of 5 years of daily spiritual or Dhamma practice in the sutra path is needed before you're introduced to the tantric path. Although you have access to all that stuff now on the internet, but that stuff is self-secret anyway, because you can look at it and read it, look at the images, but it doesn't mean anything to us unless we have a teacher to unlock that door. The door that needs to be unlocked, the key rather, that unlocks that door is bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, nobody, even if you receive those higher tantric empowerments and the teachings and all that kind of stuff, you will never benefit to the full capacity of the tantric teachings until you have the bodhicitta key. It's impossible. Why? Because the Buddha and all the manifestations of the Buddha, Aryatara, and all these other different emanations of the Buddha, they all achieved enlightenment by becoming bodhisattvas first. There's no way out of it. There's no circumventing or anything like that. You have to become a bodhisattva. At least aspiring bodhisattva. I wish to be that. So the only thing I can say about Tantra is that, it's the swiftest path out, and the Tantric path was taught by the Buddha, although other traditions would say otherwise. And there are scriptural citations to it. It is valid. It is a valid path. It is a genuine path, just like the Dzogchen path is a valid path for those who know a little bit about Tibetan Buddhism. If it wasn't a valid path, then it wouldn't be possible to achieve enlightenment. I'll give you some examples of enlightenment in one lifetime. What appears to be one lifetime, but obviously they've been working for many lifetimes. True life documented stories. One is of a Thai businesswoman who ran her own business, very, very rich woman, came into contact with Tibetan Buddhism. Her children grew up, she sold her business, got money, became a nun. Not that it was necessary, but anyway, she had the karma for that. Went to America and went on retreat. Nobody saw her. She very dedicated. She just pretty much walked off the street in terms of Buddhism. She didn't really know much. She didn't have much of a background to it. And she spent all her time in retreat. Nobody really saw her. She was in her hut all the time. They only saw her when she came out for teachings. Occasionally. Oh, so you're in hut number 2. Oh, okay. Because they would always just give food under the door and that's it. Anyway, one day they put food under the door and they noticed that the tray hadn't been touched. Okay, so they did that for a couple of days. So I thought, oh, there's something wrong here. So they opened the door and they found her body near the stove. She had died. And they cremated her, and the head lama at the time said, "Oh, we need to build a stupa for her," which is a little bit extraordinary for a conventional, normal nun to have a stupa built for her. Stupas are only built as reliquaries for realized beings. Anyway, so they listened to Rinpoche, and when they did after the 49 days, the conventional 49 days, there were rainbows above the chotin, which indicates that she had achieved enlightenment. In 1959, when all the Tibetans were exiled, coming out, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was coming out from China. One of an elderly man who was a soldier who had fought with the Chinese and had murdered people. He met Trichin Dorje-chan, and His Holiness said to him, he said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I'm not sure where I'm going now. What's going to happen to us in Tibet and to all the community?" And he said, "You should go on retreat." What? And this man was already in his 50s or something, He's a layperson. He's not, his Dharma practice was just candles and offering and ritual. It wasn't anything more than, he said, "You need to go on retreat." Trichin Dorje-chan gave him the appropriate empowerments, the instructions, etc., etc., and he went off somewhere in India, I think. He spent years in an isolated place, mountains. Eventually he passed away, and there was a rainbow when he passed away. And they said, all the High Lamas, all those who knew what was going on, they said, the Dakas and Dakinis have taken him to the Pure Land. He achieved enlightenment in one lifetime. Another documented case is in Tibet in 1952. The man called the Mani Man, M-A-N-I. Just an old man chiseling Om Mani Padme Hum on rocks, and time had come to die, to pass away, and all the family came. His son, who was in one of the nearby monasteries, came to give the blessings and preparation for death. But all the time the man was on his deathbed saying, he was telling his monk son, don't worry, everything is an illusion, everything, nothing to worry about, But his son, who was a monk, was saying, "Look, he's just blabbing on, he doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, 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 blah." So he dies. Prior to his death, he said, "Do me a favor, don't cremate me. Keep my body for seven days. Just put it aside, keep it for 7 days." Okay, so they said, "All right, fine." So they put the body in like a cupboard or something for 7 days. Every day, the body was getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. On the 7th day, there was only hair and fingernails and toenails left amongst the robes and things. He achieved the rainbow body, Jalu, G-A-L-U. And that is a sign of an extremely advanced practitioner. And they thought, what? How did he do that? We don't remember him. And then they backtracked a little bit and they said, there was a Rinpoche some years ago who came and he gave one empowerment, one time. And that man was in attendance. He received those teachings and instructions, and that was it. The rest of the time he practiced for all those years. And people came, I think Sogyal Rinpoche at the time came, and many, many High Lamas, Tulkus, yogis from all around came to see the evidence. And many of them started to cry because they said, "If we had only known, we would have asked for your teachings. If we had only known you were doing this, and yet you'd gone without telling us how you did it." Those are documented cases. So it's perfectly doable. Also within Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's, as you may know, the FPMT Center, their first Western student, Zina something or other, she's a Russian aristocrat. She, again, a documented case. She renounced. She became a nun. Not that was necessary. She had a child, etc., etc. She practiced. She passed away, and according to His Holiness at the time, His Holiness Sakya Trinzin, she took rebirth in her own family as a tulko, a High Lama. One lifetime, supposedly. First Western student of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe at the time, back in the 70s. She achieved enlightenment. That's a documented case.
So Robert, earlier when you said that it's not possible to achieve enlightenment in one lifetime, it seems that clearly it is possible.
Well, what appears to be one lifetime is really a whole section of things. These people have extraordinary karma. This is a valediction of the teachings more so than of their practice. Because the true object of refuge, you may think you'll be prostrating to a statue of the Buddha, but in fact you're prostrating to the Dharma. The Dharma is the true refuge, because the Dharma is the cause for all the Buddha's qualities. Yeah? These practitioners were practicing very, very advanced practices. Yeah? Had an incredible karma, just like Jitsun Milarepa. Yeah? So when we say you can't achieve enlightenment in one lifetime, it's not like there is an escape clause to use a legal term, but for the majority of us, it is not possible. That's what's meant by that, which is 99.9% of us. It's not possible. And it's not really that necessary, because if you become an Arya Bodhisattva, it's still okay, because then you're actually helping. You're actually being of benefit. So it's not you're escaping somewhere and never coming back. It's actually you're being of service constantly. So being a Bodhisattva is not like second best or something like that. You know what I mean? So these are examples of we can do it, that people have done it from our own backgrounds. And now that the Dhamma is spreading in the West, there will be future examples where perhaps maybe one of you could. Okay, so now if there's still time, if people still want to do the Chenrezig practice, that would be a good idea.
Any other questions?
So I've got a quick one, Robert. Just your personal opinion. So you talked about, all religions really teach people how to die. That's the gist behind most religions. What's your personal opinion on the religions? Not making a comparison here, just the religions that don't teach this, so teach people how to liberate from samsara. So, like, what happens to all those beings? They're just stuck in the cycle of samsara over and over again.
Yes, there's a story, there's a story of, a family. They have to travel long distance over harsh terrain, desert environment, if you like, and the food and water are limited. So they have an option. They go together and use up all their supplies, or they pick one person and they give that person all the food and resources, and that person goes and they find help and they bring back help. And that second option is the correct option, where that one person is given the privilege of going out there and giving all the food and all the resources, everything that's necessary for that person to bring back help. And that's an analogy of enlightenment, where you have to leave people behind in order to free yourself and then return in order to help them and show them how you did it. Another way, as I've said before, is in order to climb a mountain, you must be prepared to leave everyone and everything behind. You can't take them with you. Once you've done it, you found a route up there, then you can say, come back, you draw a map, you say, this is how I did it, you want to go? Come on. So you have to do it first, because at this moment you don't have the strength, you don't have the resources to carry everyone or anyone or anything with you other than your own karmic responsibility. So as bad or as sad as it may sound, you have to leave everyone behind initially. And then once you've done it, then you can come back and you can help out. It's possible in this lifetime to do that. So whatever you've learned, you change as a person. When people see that you've changed, hey, how come you're not angry anymore? What, you're giving up cigarettes, you're giving up alcohol, what's going on here? So they get inspired by you. The only way you can help others is through you changing first, by inspiring them. You can't force them. So if I smoke and I tell somebody else to smoke, come on. I can't tell somebody to get a haircut, for example.
Neither can I.
So You've renounced, so you're okay. That's some people say it's the tragedy. It's not. It's the practicality of it. That's unfortunately the way. But that in itself should give you the fuel. That's the purpose of it. When you contemplate, they say, yeah, I've got to leave you behind. But it's like, you leave your kid at home. They're 5 years old or something, and you leave them at home, and you say, I just got to go down to the shops. I've got to get something. Just stay there. Don't freak out. Use the phone. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. And it's that kind of urgency. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. And you have that incredible impetus. You know what they're going to be going through. You know the suffering. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right back. Watch this space. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, in a way. I was yeah.
What were you expecting?
I was just expecting, it's just so Asian-centric that I'm puzzled. Like, all the other religions of the world, or everyone else that exists, everywhere else in the world, if they're not exposed to these sorts of teachings.
Well, perhaps the question, we rephrase that. Can you achieve enlightenment as a Christian? Can you achieve enlightenment as a Muslim?
Yes.
Can you achieve enlightenment as a Hindu? And the answer is yes, you can. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. Because each religion has its own esoteric aspect, which is the actual working on the consciousness. The consciousness is the same. What's the difference between Buddhist consciousness and a Hindu consciousness? It's the same thing. But the methods, the techniques, the vocabulary is different depending on the country, the cultural situation. Yeah. For example, in Mount Athos, where the Greek Orthodox, there's the famous Greek Orthodox monastery there. The monks there, from what little bit I know, they're actually practicing Christian Tantra. What we would, in the Buddhist tradition, we would call Christian Tantra. They have the ability to read minds. They have the ability to be in two places at once, by location. These are all, for anybody who knows anything about yogic practice, these are all byproducts of samadhi meditation. So these guys in Athos, they're actually practicing a tantric form of Christianity. Likewise with the Sufi aspect, which is the esoteric aspect of Islam. They are, I know for sure, have a tantric aspect to their wisdom and knowledge. It's not what you see on the news. It's a totally, if you were to speak to a Sufi practitioner, a real Sufi teacher, for example, there will be no difference between Mahayana Buddhism and real, genuine Sufi Buddhism. It's like a brother. You just feel right at home. Wow, you're just using different words. You're using different words for the same things that I say bodhisattva, you say loving compassion, God's love, whatever, You're using God where I'm using, consciousness, I say emptiness, you say, God's ever-loving bliss or something of this nature, which is the same thing. And to get to that point, like the actual meditations, it's the same. The visualizations are different. The philosophy is absolutely different because you believe in God, we don't. But we still get there. We use a different door to get to the same room.
Yeah, right.
That's really it. Because the soul is the same. It's the same. There is no difference between my consciousness, consciousness of a Jewish person or a Hindu, etc., etc. So, at an enlightened level, all the enlightened beings, they are not at war with each other. It's only us deluded people that are at war with each other. It's politics. Back to where we started, right at the beginning of the course. Any other questions? Now's a chance.
You made a reference to full enlightenment, which also suggests then that there are different levels of enlightenment.
Different types of nirvana, yes.
Yeah. And in terms of what you've just been describing, for example, Sufi enlightenment, would you consider that as another level compared to full enlightenment? I
don't know the full extent because they're esoteric Sufi teachings, so I'm not a Sufi. I need to be in the know to know exactly what they're doing. How complete their enlightenment is, I don't know which aspect nirvana they would be consisting of. But it would definitely, enlightenment definitely is possible within their tradition, in this example, yeah. You know, with regards to within Buddhism, you know, scripturally it's said, and Arya Haribhadra in his commentary on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra says clearly that, you know, that all those arhats who are in a state of meditation which lasts for eons, which is the Hinayana Nirvana, it lasts for eons and eons. The Buddhas who have achieved perfect enlightenment, with their compassion, they actually prod and wake those Hinayana practitioners up and say, hey, do something. You've got to do something. And so those arhats take rebirth. And then they actually go on the Mahayana path. That's how that works.
And how many levels of enlightenment then is described in the Tibetan text?
How many levels of enlightenment? 4 types of nirvana, which I've forgotten the names of. But they are all, to use the example of the Hinayana nirvana, they are all because of their karmic obscurations in terms of they still haven't purified the delusion of inherent objects. So they still have that, as I said before, they still have a concept of there is still that residual notion of inherently existent, and that is what draws them down, pulls them down. Mm-hmm. The other 2 aspects of nirvana, which I've forgotten the names of, I would infer, have varying degrees of that subtle delusion still within their consciousness. It's only until finally all residual, the combination of compassion and wisdom, the total eradication of a dualistic mind, only when that has been eradicated, then you have complete irreversible nirvana, pure nirvana, yeah, where you have access to omniscience, you have access to all the knowledges and wisdoms that is necessary. Prior to that, you would still have karmic obscurations. You wouldn't have access to omniscience, for example, to see what's happening anytime, any place. Yeah. So sorry, I forgot what the other 2 nirvanas are.
It's okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm just a little bit curious when you mentioned people from other religious background, they can have a chance to get enlightened too. Because in Buddhism, we have to stick to the 5 precepts. We have to have a teacher. We need to do meditation. Then through the practice, we can get enlightened. So does that mean people from other religious background, sometimes they have an easier way to get there? Or
no, they would have their own precepts. They would have their own, also, just as a footnote there, when you become a bodhisattva, to engage in the bodhisattva's way of life, you need to take the bodhisattva precepts. In addition to that, you need to practice the 6 perfections on a daily basis. You know, generosity, ethics, patience, perseverance, meditation, and wisdom. They are the 6 perfections, which no time to go into detail. You know? But you need to, once you take the bodhisattva vows, you are obliged to be practicing bodhicitta. You'll be breaking your bodhisattva vows to abandon the Mahayana path. Yeah, that's that. Then once you receive going to the Vajrayana path, the tantric path, then you take on the tantric vows and commitments and pledges. Yeah. So in other religions, you too would take on the pledges and necessary obligations to that tradition. So the Sufi tradition, they would have that as well. You know. So it's not possible to stay on taking on vows and pledges as a lay person or an ordained person. It's basically rules of the road. If you want to drive a car, you need to follow the rules of the road. You want to get from here to there, and everybody else wants to do the same thing. We all need to cooperate together. If everybody decided they're going to drive a car how they liked, we're not going to go anywhere. So the rules of the road are following the Buddha, in this case, the Buddha's rules. You know, this is what you need to do. So in other traditions it will be, Christian rules, this is what you need to do, etc., etc. They would have their version of bodhisattva vows or tantric vows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Still have time to do Chenrezig?
Sure.
Okay, now it's best to finish off this session like we did last time, running a little bit late, but it's worthwhile to be a little bit more patient, which is one of the attributes of a bodhisattva. Nice to plant karmic seeds. It's the Chenrezig purification practice, and this is a practice where we visualize Buddha Chenrezig in front of us, head level. 1,000-arm Chenrezig or a 4-arm Chenrezig. 4-arm Chenrezig probably best easy to visualize, holding a wish-fulfilling jewel in 2 hands. In the second left hand, Buddha Chenrezig holding a Utpala flower or a lotus flower, if you like. In their second right hand, they are holding a crystal mala, rosary beads. Wearing silken robes, complexion of a 16-year-old boy, wearing the hide of an antelope on their shoulders, not a real hide. It symbolizes, I forgot the name of it, it's a deer who when this particular deer sees conflict, it always impedes or tries to impede the conflict, tries to pacify the people that are in conflict or argument. Chenrezig wears that on his shoulders as a symbol of peace and harmony. Yeah, sitting in a full lotus posture. Buddha Chenrezig's heart, there is the he syllable, which with the Chenrezig mantra there. If you can't visualize that, then just visualize like a white snowball, which is pinkish in color, and visualize that as the actual essence, the mind of Buddha Chenrezig himself. Strongly visualize that Buddha Chenrezig is in front of you. When first we recite 21 times Om Mani Padme Hum out loud, we visualize white light and nectar coming from Buddha Chenrezig's heart into our crown and down to the soles of our feet, purifying us of all negativities. That negative, all those negativities come out of our body, through the crown of our head, through our eye, tear ducts, through the mouth, the nose, the ears, through the toenails, our hand, pores of our skin, through the lower parts of our body, as if we had diarrhea. All this comes out in black, inky liquid, and all that is all our negatives we've done in body, speech, and mind in this life and previous lifetimes. So, in order to purify all negative actions, we need to accomplish the 4 opponent powers. So they are, in this case, having strong regret in all the things that we have done, all the bad things we've said, all the things we have encouraged others to say, all the things we've done wrong in terms of harming other people, all the thoughts we've had wrong in terms towards our teacher and towards to our parents, everybody else. All that comes through this negative black inky smoke and leaves our body. Feel very strongly that leaves the body. Yeah. So we have this regret. Then we have this reliance upon Buddha Chenrezig. You are the only one now at this point that can actually help me. Then we have the promise that I will promise not to do these actions again. Then we have the antidote, which is I will practice the Dharma to counteract all my negativities. Then we have the specific antidote, which is whatever we've done today that was bad, I promise not to do those things again. Whether you've lied, cheated, got angry or something like that, it specifically purifies that action that we've done today. Okay, so 21 times together, Om Mani Padme Hum, out loud, with the visualization to the best of your ability, with the four opponent powers to the best of your ability. Just visualize that you've been purified and you feel you want to let go. You have strong regret that all these things, I don't want to do these things again. Please help me. 21 times out loud, then silently for a little period. Then we come back again out loud 21 times. And then when I say after that, Om Mani Padme Hum, that last Hum, visualize strongly that all those negativities are flushed out like a strong waterfall, like Niagara Falls, washing, cleaning us inside and out. We become purified, all negativities. And then we meditate on that concept, that we are totally free of all negativities. We remain in that concept for a brief period of time. Okay, so just follow me. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. So last time we were supposed to be covering according to the program. The first session was dealt with all the subjects that are related to the process of renunciation. We didn't get through halfway last time. So hopefully this time I will backtrack a little bit in order to talk about the subject of bodhicitta, enlightened mind. Before anything else, ideally before even you walk into this room or any other room, a gompa or what we call gompa in Tibetan, the shrine room, the monastery if you like, the place where the teachings be given, there are certain prerequisites on your side that you need to implement before you even listen to any teachings, even simplistic as they are here, given here. So whether it's His Holiness the Dalai Lama giving the teachings, or whether it's somebody as simplistic as myself giving the teachings, the principle is the same. Yeah, the principle is the same. So here, because we're going to be discussing the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, it's a Mahayana. We must develop a Mahayana motivation. So therefore, even in theory, just pretend that you've come here tonight, just for the benefit of all sentient beings, that you're going to be listening to these teachings. And that even if you just remember one word, one passage, anything here, that you're going to use that knowledge to achieve enlightenment for all sentient beings, everyone that you know of that is suffering just like us. So we must have that prerequisite. With that motivation, every action we do in body, speech and mind becomes a Mahayana virtuous act. So if you're going to be giving food, you compliment somebody, it becomes a Mahayana act because you have set the tone of, in this case, the teaching. So it's a Mahayana teaching. Secondly, as last time,